Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space 4.16.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Jimmy Neutron Main 420.
This is DJ Hash Main.
I thought it was DJ Nash.
You don't need to worry about that.
Okay, well, today we've got a 7-pager, so we're back to a good length, not a scary length. I mean, not good for you guys. You want more Aetheral Space. Yeah.
I gave the people like 3 chapters worth of content in that chapter. They could show a little gratitude.
Domain expansion, gratitude trap. Now you can't leave until you drop a comment saying how grateful you are for this series.
I'm waiting. Maybe you'll just die in here from my techniques.
What? What techniques do you use?
Devil punch.
That's a pretty good punch. Oh man, you should read Chainsaw Man. Anyway, here we are. We're reading Aetheral Space, but first we have to give you a recap. We have to give you... Fuck. I was going to say we have to give you a recap, but actually we have to end the video early because Tan doesn't know how to read, so I have to...
That's why you're here. That's why you're here. You read it to me, and I go to bed at the end of the video.
False alarm, guys. Right, but recap. Okay, so, Piero? Is it Pierre? Piero.
Piero, yes.
That's Tanhoney's mother, sorry. Piero, he... Sorry, that caught me off guard. Sorry, I don't know why that's got me off guard. Okay, Piero, fought, the guy, the honor guy, and he won. And then the guys were like, well, I guess you own the ship now, mate, but we'll get you next time. And then he's like, I don't think so. And then he blew them up, and sent their ship to the Supremacy.
Yeah,
and,
well, sent it back into Supremacy's base.
Yes, and he also killed this guy named Danny, because Danny wanted to be honest, and Piero fights for his ideals or something. And also, Dragon was there, I think. I don't remember what he did.
He wasn't there.
No, Dragon was doing some... Oh, no, that whole chapter was about Piero, that's right.
Yeah.
I was thinking of 4.14. Alright, well then, shall we continue?
Sure thing. I'm recovering a bit from a cold here, so do forgive me if you get tan in the altar here.
So would you prefer if we do 2 Aetheral Spaces and then do 2 Your Turn to Dies later in the week? Because you'll have to read a lot for Your Turn to Die.
That's probably a good idea, yes.
Yeah. So this week we'll go to 2 Aetherals on Wednesday and 2 Your Turn to Dies on Sunday?
This is the level of planning you can expect from Discovering SCP. We're planning
Welcome
during
to
the
Discovering
video.
SCP. Alright. Daphne Hallicourt watched, glaring through her new glasses. How had everything gone so wrong? First the instructor's idiotic test, then the encounter with Piero, and now the Supremacy ship has just blown the fuck up? Was she cursed or just genuinely that unlucky? Well, not that unlucky. She'd managed to run into Niles just as she was dying, after all. There would never have been a better time to grab her Aether armament. If nothing else, the world seemed keen to give her a chance to escape all this. It had necessitated stealing from the dying, outrunning poison gas, and now stealing a ship, but the opportunity was there all the same. She stared through the walls of the sleek ship, the only one in the impound hangar not locked in via the clamps. The presence of a few Aether users was notable, one in the cockpit, a shroud of purple Aether coating them, and the other a little further back, surrounded by a flare of flickering red Aether. The purple one in the front was in near-top condition, but the red one in the back seemed tired. If Daphne played her cards right and executed a proper sneak attack, there was a good chance she could dispatch both of them and get her hands on that ship, that she could get out of here. If she managed to survive when even the instructor was probably dead, surely the Commission would have no choice but to make her a special officer. Killing Jamie Piero had been a fool's errand from the start. Daphne had understood that the moment she'd laid eyes on him in person. She'd hid among some corpses as he strode down a hallway waiting for her opportunity to strike, only to realize what she was dealing with as soon as she properly looked at him. Her cogitant senses had instinctually seemed to scream, "No bad wrong," as she observed his movements, and a feeling of distinct nausea had risen up in her throat. Oh, I'm just realizing, you know how, in anime, when they, the way he moves, he's seen 10 years of war. I imagine how amplified that must be for cogitants now, with, the fucking hundreds of years of lives with the prince.
Yeah,
that was the feeling Dragon got. He wasn't cogitant enough to put it to words. He just put the scouter on, just question marks.
Yes, that's a downside to the prince. If you have it, cogitants will instinctually fucking hate your guts.
That's actually really funny, just I just imagining, like, did you ever play Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness?
Yeah.
Like the shadow Pokemon, like a Cogitant's like looking and they look at your own, it's just like this aura of darkness. Like, who is this guy?
This malice.
Stupid. She'd been so focused on the ship that she'd forgotten to keep an eye on the rest of her surroundings. 2 more clouds of Aether were moving towards the ship now. One blue and one green, but both sickly... Wait, she's still on the ship?
Yeah.
So she hasn't really outran the poison gas. She's
not in the hallways where the main bar is.
It seemed exposure to the gas had done a number on them. Unwelcome variables, but not impossible to outmaneuver.
I think we might have skipped 2 paragraphs there.
Oh, shit. There was something profoundly wrong about that man. She didn't know what, and to tell the truth, she had absolutely no desire to find out. Still, that was in the past. Daphne adjusted the daggers in her hands as she stepped out from behind the packing crates, getting ready to begin making her way towards the ship, only to hop back behind cover as the hangar doors opened. Stupid! She'd been so focused on the ship that she'd forgotten to keep an eye on the rest of her surroundings. 2 more clouds of Aether were moving towards the ship now, one blue and one green, but both sickly and weak. It seemed exposure to the gas had done a number on them. Unwelcome variables, but not impossible to outmaneuver. Daphne ran through the factors in her mind. 1. The purple Aether in the cockpit. If she waited until the right time, circumstances would keep them out of any fight that had occurred. 2. The red Aether in the back of the ship. They would be the main enemy in any combat. As such... a sneak attack on them would be the best opening move. Why would they be the main enemy? I thought they were tired. 3.
Because they're the ones who are going to be in a position to fight.
The blue Aether approaching the ship. Flickering, but by no means fully weakened. Their presence wasn't necessarily a disadvantage either. A weak person that needed protecting would be an effective handicap for Daphne's main opponent. 4. The green Aether. It was about to dissipate completely. No matter the condition the user was in, they wouldn't be able to fight on Daphne's level. As the 2 wisps of Aether entered the shop, Daphne took a deep breath. This would be difficult but doable, but possible. And possible was all Daphne Halicourt needed. She began her approach. What was North's voice? Was he like meow?
It was meow, but maybe tone down the meow for a little bit because it got a bit cartoony.
Yeah. You making sure it's okay to let these guys go? North's accomplice. Oh, this is North's accomplice. Fuck. You are mega sure it's okay to let these guys go? North's accomplice said, watching Skipper's new ship zoom out of the hangar. The point is for the survivors to be 0 guys, I think. Their fingers brushed over the controls for the vessel's guns. North glared at the other person. Cut the bullshit. We had a deal. Skipper and the rest get out unharmed. I'm taking half pay for that shit, you know? Don't fuck with me. Oh? The person in the pilot's chair glanced up eagerly. And what's happening if I'm fucking with you? North allowed a crackle of translucent Aether to run over his arm. Things will get ugly. The pilot chuckled again, leaning in further so that his lumpy, bizarre face was illuminated by the glow of the onboard lighting. Wait. Oh no! You have to read him.
Well, maybe Mazma wants things to go ugly.
They were in Mazma's ship, which had stuck around and attached itself to the outside of the hull after flying out of the hangar. This has fucked me up. They had to make sure only the right survivors made it. I can't believe Mazma was the villain. I should have known. Why would he be around for no reason? After all. You try and fight me, buddy? North said, crossing his arms, and I'll make sure to smash those controls of yours in the second before you kill me. Floating in space with a useless ship sound like fun to you? For a second, Mazma genuinely molded over, working his jaw left and right. Then he relented with a wave of his hand and turned back to the controls.
Don't be worried, fake guy. Your friends are Mazma's friends too now. Mazma never kills a friend in a way that is not fair. And Mazma already made deal with you, right? Mazma is angelic guy. Mazma does not go back on his word or make a lie happen. You got it?
North rubbed the bridge of his nose. I got it, he muttered. And they ain't my friends. You can consider keeping them alive a professional obligation, okay? Going around killing my former employers don't look good on a resume.
Okay,
Mazma said cheerfully.
You are believed, my guy.
Half pay for a job like this was still an obscene amount of money, but it still wasn't enough to deal with this kind of bullshit. North glanced behind himself at the open panel in the ship's floor, at the computer unit embedded there, green light running through its circuits. Does this imply Mazma's the guy that hired him? It does it?
You could.
The parasitic auto-brain they'd brought along had done well in piggybacking off of the ship's processes. They'd been able to pull up information and control evacuation procedures easily. It wasn't the kind of trick that would work on the UAP twice, of course, but they didn't need it to work twice. It was a surprise that his employer had been able to get this kind of hardware together on such short notice anyway, to be frank. Apparently, the instructor who'd brought Special Officer Hopefuls here had been part of a hardline faction intent on open war with the UAP. His his employer hadn't been able to act openly against the Special Officers Commission. Officially, they were independent from the whims of the body, so they'd hired North to ensure the instructor's mission failed and to eliminate any evidence on either side. It had been such a simple job, and yet North's eyes flicked back to Masma. Needless to say, North's collaborator had invited himself to this little escapade. He certainly had the rank to do those kinds of things, and there were very few people in the galaxy with the guts to say no to him. To be frank, North had half expected the whole thing to turn into a disaster with this guy around, but he'd stuck to his half of the deal. Hang on, I'm getting a little confused by the narration. Is he saying that he's surprised this guy had the guts to say no to him as in North, or very few people had the guts to say no to Masma?
Latter.
Okay. He'd gotten Skipper and the crew out safe and cleared the way for North to do his job. Still, he was kind of an eyesore. "You really going to stick with that dumbass disguise?" North said. He recognized it was a little hypocritical for him to be calling someone else out for wearing a mask, but he simply couldn't stand looking at this one any further. Masma didn't look back.
"What disguise? Masma is always this guy."
North let a little more of his annoyance slip into his tone. "Stop it!" Masma gave in surprisingly easily. He chuckled and shrugged, his body language loosening into a kind of assured cockiness as he leaned back in his chair. When he spoke next, his voice was completely different. The bizarre Omni accent replaced by a deep, velvety voice like melting chocolate. I can't wait to hear your impression of that.
Oh, I still gotta do it.
Yeah.
Can't blame me.
That's velvety?
Well, that's as velvety as I can do.
He said, running a hand over the side of his face, brushing against his stitched-together scar.
Great artists can't help but admire their craft.
His fingers slipped through the stitches, sliding underneath his face in a grotesque display, and then the man started pulling something out. Bundles of once white string, stained red by blood, being pulled out of the scar seemingly without end. As he pulled out the string, the shape of his face began to change. The lumps, actually bundles of string, shrinking and softening out until his face looked smooth and sleek as a videograph star. At the same time, his hair darkened from its vivid red to midnight black, flopping down from its sticky-up position and falling to his shoulders. There was one last thing. The man's fingers worked deeper into his wound, adjusting their angles so they were reaching up towards his eyes. Then they pulled out two last segments of string, and the moment they were free of his body, the color of his sclera shifted from white to umbrant black. Satisfied, the man cracked his neck.
"Ah, that's much better,"
said Wu Ming, the fourth contender, the clown. Oh, this was the guy that didn't show up, right?
What do you mean?
When they were introducing the contenders, this was like the one that didn't show up to the meeting.
Well, no one was actually at the meeting there.
Oh, sorry. Well, it was the one that wasn't mentioned.
It was mentioned. We'll go back to that later.
Okay, said Wu Ming, the fourth contender, the clown of the supremacy, the man with 1,000 powers.
In terms of comfort, I'd give this disguise method a 6 out of 10.
His eyes flicked up to look at North.
What do you think?
When faced with a predator, prey can instinctively feel the difference in strength, and North could feel it here, a sudden sense of fragility in his bones, like his body was about to collapse in on itself. This man was one of only 4 people who tried to kill the Supreme and survived, one of only 4 people who stood almost at the apex of the supremacy. In comparison, North was little more than a gnat. Still, he had an appearance to maintain. "I'm thinking I want to get paid," North rolled his eyes. "You want to keep sucking your own dick, or you want to get out of here?"
So vulgar.
Wu Ming laughed genuinely, turning back to the controls.
Still, I don't dislike that about your personality. In terms of personal enjoyment, I'd give you an 8 out of 10.
Never asked for a rating, pal.
And yet you've got one.
Wu Ming wagged a finger.
Such is the way of the world. No matter who you are, you're constantly being assessed in the eyes of others. Don't take it too badly, North. You're an 8 in my eyes, but in the eyes of someone else, you could be a 10. The difference between an angel and a demon is merely the viewing angle.
Oh. He fucking incorporated his angel and demon thing into Masma. That was just a part of his character. He held his fingers out in front of him as a frame, as if he were looking at a screen. Profound. North rolled his eyes again. "Now, we going or what?"
Ah, the impatience of youth.
Wu Ming sighed, tapping a few buttons on the console to chart their flight path. The ship began to move, preparing to begin the series of jumps that would take them to the nearest friendly light point. At the same time, he waved a hand near his open scar, and as a spark of rainbow aether jumped between his hand and his face, the scar began to close again, this time leaving no trace of any injury. North didn't have the eyes to observe the phenomenon directly, but he'd heard secondhand how this worked, nanoscopic lengths of string binding the wound together at the molecular level. For most people, a power like that would be the culmination of their training. For a 1 in a billion freak like Wu Ming, however, was treated as just another party trick.
Still,
Wu Ming said, leaning back in his seat, putting his feet up on the console.
this was an enjoyable mission. Your friends are interesting people, my boy.
I told you, they ain't my friends. They're former professional associates. Wu Ming chuckled.
You dance around words like nothing else, kid, but I've been doing this longer than you. You've caught a case of the feelings, I'm afraid. Unfortunate condition, no known cure. I've had it myself.
Can you just fly?
You're professional associates, then.
Wu Ming ignored him, staring up at the ceiling.
They've caught my notice. I like them. Good, interesting people. Strong, especially the man who leads them. You can see why Avaman is so obsessed. In terms of how much I want to fight them, I think...
Wu Ming's smile spread into a toothy, feral grin.
10 out of 10.
I love you. God, I love your writing. What happened? Ruth shouted, doing her best to hold the unconscious skipper up as she staggered backwards into the ship. I don't know. Dragon wheezed, leaning onto the wall for support as he massaged his throat. I don't... The gas, maybe, I think. But he said he had a countermeasure. Crap, I don't know. Ruth winced. Dragon clearly wasn't in his best condition either. He'd said he hadn't breathed in any of the gas, but maybe he just hadn't noticed. Or there very well could have been other ways for it to enter the body. In all likelihood, they probably didn't have long before Dragon fell unconscious too. Bruno! She cried out as she dragged Skipper into the Slipstream's main room, throwing him down on a couch. Excuse me. Need a hand here. Skipper's in a bad way. Bruno had a little bit of expertise with medical matters, she knew. Hell, with the kind of training he'd had, he probably had a little bit of expertise in everything. Technically, Serena should have received the same training, but Ruth really doubted she would have paid enough attention. It only took a few seconds for Bruno to report, dragging Dragon over to a chair as he made his way to Skipper. His eyes scanned over the unconscious man. What happened? He asked, voice sharp. Some kind of gas, Dragon mumbled, looking terribly small in the armchair he'd been deposited in. He breathed some in, probably. Shit! Bruno hissed, before leaning in and placing his ear against Skipper's chest, listening to the ragged sound of his breathing. His eyes flicked to Ruth. This is beyond me. This ship has a stasis unit, right? Ruth nodded. She'd noticed it when they'd first stolen the ship. A unit to keep injured crew members stable en route to medical facilities. Right, Bruno nodded. We'll get him on ice and find a doctor at the nearest light point. Help me carry him. Ruth nodded and went to pick Skipper up by the shoulders, only to freeze when she saw the sudden intense expression on Bruno's face. He was staring past her, over her shoulder, and as she looked at him, she could see a reflexive strand of purple aether crackle through his hair. Hesitantly, Ruth looked back over her shoulder. Dragon had been moved from his chair, now standing in the middle of the room. Behind him, holding him in a headlock and pressing a pistol against his temple, was a woman with pale green hair and bright blue eyes, wearing a white supremacy uniform. I'm sure you can guess, the woman said, keeping both Bruno and Ruth in her sight. But I have some demands. Bum bum bum! Wah, wah, wah. And before Skipper dies because they didn't get him to the pod fast enough. I'm just saying, if that happens...
What a way to go.
So that was a chapter, and it was sad. And I can't believe Mazma's a villain. Or maybe he's the hero and we just don't know. Maybe the Supremacy are the good guys. Yeah, Mazma's bae. In terms of how much I like Mazma, 10 out of 10. God, when is Musashi coming back, do you think?
I know, but I can't really answer.
Oh, right. Sigh. Alright, well guys, thanks for watching.
You sometimes forget, you can't just being sent these.
No, I know it's you writing them, but I just want to talk about them, and you're the only person here, but you can't tell me anything. It's unequal, you know? You know what I mean?
All men are born unequal, and they die that way too.
Wow. And with that, we will end the episode. Bye!
Bye!